Emergent literacy describes a child who has been engaged in reading and writing activities long before coming to school, according to Gunning. Emergent literacy skills help students to develop their own ideas about how words work. For example, students reasoning that a word is long because a particular object is long. Gunning points out the example the word snake is long because a snake is a long animal. That's how students reason their word development skills. In 1971, Reed observed students applying inventive spelling or spelling phonetically without being introduced to typical spelling rules. This is a huge sign of emergent literacy. These students are being exposed to the concept of phonemic awareness and connecting sounds and letters in correspondence with each other. In order to develop emergent literacy skills, students must gain a basic understanding of concepts about print. This includes, but is not limited to, identifying how a book is read, for example, reading from the front to the back, identifying the different parts of a book, such as the front cover, the back cover, the spine, and the title page. This also includes students recognizing that we read words, not pictures. Students need to know that the pictures are there to help us identify unknown words and to help visualize what's going on in the story. Also, another concept about print students need to recognize are the conventions of English, such as sentences ending with proper punctuation, also capitalization being at the beginning of sentences, things like that. Development of pre-writing begins at 18 months. In this pre-alphabetic stage, children begin to realize that letters create words. However, they have not made the connection that letters represent sounds. As they progress to the alphabetic stage, children begin to recognize that letters do represent sounds, and oftentimes they will recognize the first letter or sound in a word as being the overall sound. For example, Gunning uses the K sound to represent that a child might think that the C in car represents that K sound. As children again phase into the consolidated alphabetic stage, spelling is no longer guided merely by sound. Children can begin to spell words with minimal errors. They also, in this stage, begin to learn the conventions and the rules of spelling. According to Gunning, phonological awareness involves being able to detect different and separate words within a sentence. It also is defined as being able to differentiate between syllables within a word while being able to segment those words into their separate sounds. Phonological awareness also deals with recognizing the beginning, middle, and ending sounds in words, such as the word cat, recognizing that the C makes the k sound, the A makes the a sound, and the T makes the t sound. Being able to recognize those specific sounds in each part of the word is a big part in the phonological awareness. Gunning suggests that nearly all of the words we acquire are learned through phonics. I had never thought about this before, but phonics instruction should be tailored and differentiated according to the learner. In my first grade class that I observed, I noticed that the teacher would spend about 15 minutes working with her struggling students to ensure that they understood letter to sound correspondence, so that way that confusion could be eliminated early on. There are also multiple approaches to phonics instruction, such as analytic, synthetic, whole or hold apart approach, or the systematic approach. I have only observed the synthetic approach, which is modeling individual sounds and blending the sounds to say the word, but deciding what works best for you and your students is probably the most important piece of advice that I can give for you. Gunning suggests that words that do not follow a phonetic pattern should be taught by visual memory. High frequency words rely on the theory and the idea that students are aware that there is a correlation between letters and sounds. Gunning points out that our most common words typically are usually high frequency words, such as the word one or of. They typically don't follow a regular phonetic pattern. When teaching these high frequency words, it is important to point out the regularities in the pattern as well as the irregularities. Gunning states that pointing out the regular elements of the irregular words help children use these as clues to learning the word. Shared and interactive reading practices allow an opportunity for students to develop language, literacy, background knowledge, communication skills, and critical thinking skills. I love shared and interactive reading practices and procedures because they promote in-depth discussion. These get students thinking about questions to ask their peers, things that they're a little confused about. This is a great way for students to clear up any confusion that they may have about a certain topic that we're looking at. My school requires that we implement read alouds every day, so this can be done during breakfast or at the end of the day. My class is currently reading Nancy Drew and the Hidden Staircase, and to get my students interacted and sharing, we pretend to be young sleuths just like Nancy Drew. We incorporate an ongoing suspect list, so each day my students are wanting to add characters to the list. But of course, to promote that critical thinking skills, we can't just throw any characters up on the board or anything. They have to prove to me, along with the class, that this character does deserve to be a suspect, and they give me reasons to support their thinking. And I really love this, and I really love shared and interactive reading practices. I use them even in math. When planning for preschool and early literacy students, Gunning states that parents and teachers must give young children the experiences they need. This includes planning activities that allow students to have exposure to books, in-depth conversations, pretend play, and even drawing. Exposure to these activities allows early literacy students to begin the process of letter recognition as well as developing their opportunities for understanding of the relationship between letters and sounds. According to Gunning, careful observation is the best way to assess emergent literacy in students. When assessing emergent literacy students, questions to keep in mind include: is the student reading the pictures? Is the student merely memorizing the text? Things like this will give us a better understanding as to what we can do to help our students become readers, fluent readers, and independent readers. Gunning also states that observations should focus on what the child can do. So we need to be giving credit for if the child is memorizing the text. That's awesome. What can we do to push this child past that into actually reading the text? Gunning also includes the Emergent Literacy Observation Guide. This checklist and observation offers an in-depth look at specific things that we should be observing and taking note of as we are assessing emergent learners. Informal assessments are huge when assessing emergent readers. Gunning lists several items to use when informally assessing emergent literacy. For example, begin by assessing letter knowledge. For example, ask students to identify upper and lower case letters. Always start with uppercase first. These are easier to identify for students. Another way you can informally assess a student is by a writing sample. Have the child write their name. If they can do this with ease, try another word that they may know. Then you can continue on and you can ask the student to develop a story depending on their level if they're able to write that much. Another way to informally assess a student is by print familiarity. So, for example, give the child a book that they may know. Casually discuss the book using print conventions such as, what is this book about? Did you like this story? What is the author talking about? For example, in Pete the Cat, Groovy Shoes, he talks about groovy shoes. Next, with print familiarity, move on to begin reading the print. Before you start reading, ask the child where you should begin reading. The child should point to the first word on the page if they have background knowledge with books. Next, you can progress this informal assessment by asking the child to point to each word in the sentence as you read. You may also have the student to answer the question, how many letters are in this word? Things like that to give you an idea of how well they know and can understand and interpret what is the text about, what's going on in the book, things like that.